What would happen if Luffy trained his Haki from the beginning? Let's understand that our protagonist from the very start of the series was a powerful character with extraordinary abilities for his age. He managed to defeat almost all of his enemies before the time skip. However, due to the great weakness of not having Haki, tragedies occurred that affected him emotionally. Luffy realized he was too weak to protect his crew, so he had his time skip and trained with Rayleigh to become a more complete fighter. But what if he had undergone this training from the start? Would Luffy, with his devil fruit, be as good as he is today? Let's begin, and the story starts with only a few changes, but altering some things at the same time. When Shanks discovers that the Gomu Gomu fruit is aboard a marine ship, he goes straight to attack it, stealing the fruit. Back on Fuchsia Village, the red-haired pirate has the same interaction with Luffy, and a hungry Luffy eats the fruit, becoming rubber. Of course, later on, Shanks will also lose his arm, making the promise with Luffy that he will become a pirate even greater than our favorite one-armed pirate. Now the story takes a slight unexpected turn. When Garp arrives on the island, he realizes that the boy has eaten a devil fruit. When our grandfather leaves Luffy with Dadan, he asks her to take care of him. Here, Luffy meets Ace in the same way as in the original story. However, in this case, Garp becomes much more involved in the training of his two grandsons, focusing on both the fruit and Haki, with the goal of turning them into Marines. Still, Garp does not realize that both possess the Conqueror's Haki until the day Ace, Sabo, and Luffy are training. Suddenly, a massive beast appears and captures Sabo to devour him. Garp, who was out looking for something to eat, notices the situation and tries to rescue Sabo. However, the animal was already overwhelmed by the Haki of One Piece when, all of a sudden, Ace and Luffy seemingly freeze time, activating their Conqueror's Haki and knocking the animal unconscious. At this moment, Garp realizes he needs to take the boys' training more seriously and decides to turn them into Haki machines. From here, the three start gradually developing their abilities and understanding the basics of each type of Haki. The day of the problem with the island's bandit arrives, and since Garp is not on the island, Sabo is taken back to his biological family. As in the original story, a celestial dragon shoots him, but he is rescued by Dragon, loses his memory, and begins his own training. Meanwhile, Ace and Luffy grieve over the death of their brother and decide to leave when they turn 17. But in this case, they train their Haki with their grandfather, which means both develop Garp's famous Fist of Love spectacularly. Even so, their grandfather still hopes they will become marine officers. Of course, both swear and swear they want to be pirates. Regardless, their old grandfather occasionally takes them to a training site where they face off against marine ships, becoming even stronger physically. After 9 years, Ace sets out and forms his own crew. He obtains the Mera Mera no Mi and becomes Fire Fist Ace. At this point, we don't need to change anything in Ace's story since he can still join Whitebeard's pirates. 2 years later, it's Luffy's turn to set out to sea. Of course, he defeats the Sea King here, and when he reaches Alvida's ship, just like in the original story, he destroys everything. When they go to Zoro, he rescues him, but Zoro realizes that this guy is incredibly strong and has extraordinary abilities he's never seen before. Here, it's important to remember that Haki practically didn't exist for Zoro, so he notices that Luffy has something different. Later, they defeat Buggy easily, and Nami, who has been wandering around, ends up joining the crew. When they head to Syrup Village, where Usopp is, they discover Kuro's entire plan and defeat him. What I'm saying is that at this point in the story, everything happens almost the same way, but much faster. They also defeat Don Krieg, and Sanji joins the crew. Zoro is defeated by Mihawk, and Nami is saved by her companions. The only difference is that upon seeing Luffy's Haki, everyone becomes interested in acquiring that power much earlier. Now comes the moment to change several things, especially when we arrive at Logtown. Here we meet Smoker, and Buggy is still searching for the protagonist, which happens just like in the anime. However, the confrontation with Smoker won't be the same. Since Luffy has Haki, this time he can fight Smoker in a one-on-one battle. Although he doesn't yet have fully developed Haki, he gains experience during the fight, and Smoker realizes he truly can't defeat Luffy. Both are evenly matched, but the Straw Hats manage to escape. The cool thing here is that Dragon doesn't even need to intervene in the fight. Thus, the Straw Hats set off for the Grand Line, making their iconic promise. When they arrive at Drum Island, they defeat Wapol and recruit Chopper. However, during the entire journey, both Sanji and Zoro are training their Haki. This is because even in this alternate story, Luffy has a bit more intelligence. With a clearer understanding of Haki, he explains the basics that his grandfather taught him during their training. Now things get exciting. Having already met Princess Vivi, made the promise to Laboon, and encountered Ace, they are now ready to fight Crocodile. Do you remember the scene where Crocodile says he will defeat Luffy in 3 minutes? Let me tell you, that's not even close to what happens in this this story. When the fight begins, Luffy attacks, and Crocodile realizes that despite being young, the boy can hit him, even though he's a Logia user. The key here is that we won't need plot assistance for Luffy to defeat the villain. While in their first fight, both are evenly matched, Crocodile has more experience. He hits hard, and the Straw Hat doesn't fall. Crocodile even manages to wound Luffy severely, but the boy is still standing. This happens because, in addition to the resilience granted by his Devil Fruit, Luffy also has Haki, allowing him to endure much more. Here comes the climax of the fight, where the Straw Hat remembers part of his training and unleashes his final attack on Crocodile, called Gomu Gomu no Blue Hole, in the style of his grandfather, defeating the adversary. When Luffy collapses from exhaustion, Nico Robin, who was nearby, helps him, and Luffy thanks her at that moment. Later, Robin can even join the crew, just like in the original story. Meanwhile, the Baroque Works agents try to flee since they no longer have a leader, but Zoro quickly defeats Mr. 1, and Sanji takes down Mr. 2. As a result, they are all taken to Impel Down. The best part is that even in Alabasta, the coup d'etat never occurs, and the Straw Hats leave the city free from oppression. Thus, everyone earns their first bounty. When they arrive at Skypiea, the Straw Hats become a real problem for Enel, and Luffy defeats him much faster since his observation Haki is better than the Thunder Gods. When they descend, it's time for them to meet Aokiji. Although Luffy fights well, he realizes that the Admiral is stronger than him and literally beats the entire crew. Even with Haki, this encounter motivates the crew to further increase their power. Later, when they reach Water 7, things become much easier, and here, Luffy also develops Gear 2 and Gear 3. In this case, he defeats Rob Lucci with a Gomu Gomu no Galaxy Impact at extraordinary speed, saving his crewmate Robin. The main point is that here, Luffy has the power of post-time skip Luffy, meaning he's absurdly strong. When they arrive at Sabaody, they meet Rayleigh. As you know, in the original story, the Straw Hats were defeated by the Marines, but this will be the moment where everyone shines with their Haki. After Luffy punches Charlos, Kizaru is sent along with the Pacifistas. However, here, Zoro, Luffy, and Sanji will have enough power to defeat the robots on their own. Now, in the confrontation against Kizaru, although Borsalino is incredibly strong, the crew will by no means be weak and will manage to escape, especially with the help of the Dark King. After escaping from Sabaody, the Straw Hats will not be separated by Kuma, as their advanced training makes it unnecessary. However, Kuma, as a secret agent of the Revolutionary Army, leaves an important message for the protagonist. Hey, Ace is in danger. This is where Luffy sees the Vivre card his brother gave him slowly burning. When Luffy learns about this, he decides to go directly to Impel Down. However, in this version, he tells his crew to accompany him as they feel ready to face any challenge. At that moment, Nami tells the captain that they shouldn't go to that prison because there's no way to access it. Moreover, she herself noticed in the newspaper that the execution is in a few days, so it would be better to come up with a plan. It is at this moment that the Dark King tells them they have some time to train a bit, explaining that although they are powerful, there are still things they need to learn. Rayleigh looks at the monster trio and asks, "Did you see the level of a Marine Admiral? Do you really think you could beat one in a one-on-one fight?" The three of them remember the encounter with Aokiji and feel motivated, preparing to bring chaos and destruction to Marineford. Here, the Straw Hats undergo training similar to what Luffy experienced in Wano. It's quick but productive. Days pass, and the day of the execution arrives. When they reach the location, Whitebeard is already there. However, the Straw Hats arrive alongside the Dark King, who had promised to help them, and so the war begins. Before this, Luffy and Whitebeard have a conversation where they agree that the goal of both is to rescue the Fire Fist. Whitebeard accepts, as Ace had spoken to him about his brother. However, something even more important happens. He senses that this boy might be even stronger than his own son, and possesses something beyond mere fighting ability. Here comes a small problem. Luffy never met Boa Hancock and didn't rescue the prisoners from Impel Down. The question is, where on earth will they get the key to rescue Ace? Good question. You'll find out later. When everyone enters the battlefield, Zoro and Marco team up against Aokiji, combining their attacks to keep him at bay. Sanji and Jozu team up to fight Kizaru, while Robin, Frankie, and Chopper assist by battling vice admirals and captains. With Rayleigh present, Boa Hancock joins the fray and asks him why he's helping these vulgar men. Rayleigh's response is that it's for the future, as he looks at Luffy in an epic manner. When Boa Hancock looks at the protagonist, she senses the boy's purity. While she doesn't fall in love at this moment, she understands that if Rayleigh Rayleigh is on his side, there's no need to question it. The good thing here is that with Rayleigh at Marineford, the balance shifts much more. He helps in the fights against the strongest opponents. Luffy, who is rushing to reach Ace, faces off against Mihawk. However, things are different this time because Hawkeye sees that Luffy is much stronger than when they first met. Despite cuts being his weakness, Luffy's observation Haki helps him avoid Mihawk's attacks. Zoro notices this and tells Marco that, if possible, he should assist their captain. At that moment, Vista steps in front of Mihawk, telling Zoro to keep going. Marco then says to Zoro, "I don't think it will be necessary right now." In other words, it's still not the time for Mihawk to face Zoro, or for Zoro to face Mihawk. Meanwhile, Whitebeard has his showdown with Akainu. Yes, he is also betrayed by Squard, and everything unfolds as in the original story. Lava punches and earthquakes everywhere. Luffy is now close to where Ace is imprisoned, and of course, things are much easier this time. Sengoku orders Ace's immediate execution. What they didn't know is that Luffy now controls Conqueror's Haki. When the executioners move to finish Ace, Luffy steps up, just as he did on the island of Ojin, and unleashes his power, knocking out over 50,000 Marines, including those on the platform. At this moment, the Fleet Admiral orders 2 more executioners to be sent. Remember when I mentioned that the Straw Hats had a plan? Now you'll see what happened. Brook and Nami had infiltrated the Marine base during the chaos. Nami stole the key and some uniforms. Disguised as executioners, they prepared for the crucial moment. Meanwhile, Luffy faces his grandfather, Garp, who steps in front of him saying, "Let's see if you have the resolve to save your brother, you stupid grandson." But Garp says this with hesitation. Luffy does exactly what he did in the original version, making his way to the platform. Sengoku, unaware of the infiltration, orders the execution of Guldy Rogers' son. That's when a yo-ho-ho-ho is heard. Luffy, who didn't care much about the plan, is surprised and overjoyed to see that Nami and Brook are the new executioners. Brook, just as he did in Whole Cake with the key, frees Ace. Sengoku, enraged, transforms into a giant Buddha and attempts to destroy him. But here, Luffy is far too powerful. The two clash fists in an epic moment, and so Ace is freed, and the platform is destroyed by the Conqueror's Haki of both Luffy and the Buddha-like Sengoku. Now the combination of the brothers is spectacular as they escape the chaos, one carrying Brook and the other carrying Nami. Ace says, "Thank you so much for coming to save me." Sengoku, seeing the gravity of the situation, orders his forces to reorganize, declaring that they must pursue Roger's son and also take the head of Dragon's son. The admirals head straight for them, but Whitebeard, as in the original Marineford, intervenes, sacrificing himself for the boys, with his final words directed at both of them. He says, "You are the future." Even at that moment, he looks at Rayleigh and says, "I guess I'll be seeing Roger soon. We had great battles, and in the end, look at us. We became allies. Take care of the boys, Dark King. Here, we all bear the sacrifice of our father." But Ace is stubborn, and when Akainu brutally attacks Whitebeard, he goes straight for Ace, saying, "Look at that. Your father sacrificed himself for trash like you." Ace, enraged, turns back to fight. However, Akainu, taking advantage of his devil fruit and Haki, burns part of Whitebeard's son's body. Luffy, with his observation Haki, realizes that Ace is about to lose and quickly intervenes. In a desperate moment, he unlocks his most powerful technique, a gear that closely resembles Gear 4, but since he can't fully control it, he arrives slightly late and is injured. Akainu, who is incredibly strong, continues the execution and grabs Ace head-on. Just as he's about to deliver the final blow, everything stops. At that moment, Rayleigh sees it all in his mind and says, "I think I'll fulfill Whitebeard's wish right now." He intervenes, asking Akainu what he fears about the new generation. Akainu, frustrated at not being able to become the hero of the Marines, attacks the Dark King, severely injuring him. This is when Luffy, in a Super Saiyan-like moment, awakens a power hinting that he is transforming into Nika. He punches Akainu, sending him flying to the other side of Marineford, and declares, "Take Ace and Rayleigh, because I'm about to do the Gomu Gomu no Galaxy Rock," a massive punch delivered at the speed of a galaxy impact. Luffy adds, "I think this will be my last attack." When Luffy unleashes it, the damage is colossal, but after expending all his energy and Haki, he collapses. Seeing Luffy unconscious, Zoro, Sanji, and Marco rush to rescue him, as well as the injured Rayleigh and Ace. But just as the Marines plan to stop them, Blackbeard makes his entrance, finishing off Whitebeard and stealing the Gura Gura no Mi. Before this, in his final moments, Whitebeard declares, "The One Piece is real." You know, unimportant details in the story. Once this part is over, the Marines continue to complicate the protagonist's escape. At that moment, Shanks the Red-Haired makes an epic entrance, declaring that the war is over. Here's something I want to say. As you can see, Gear 5 wasn't awakened during the Marineford War, but the key point here is that Luffy, having Haki, managed to save his brother. By the end, Trafalgar Law doesn't need to save Luffy because Chopper can treat him along the way. So, as you can see, he survives and will later be able to support Luffy. Sabo will hardly remember his brothers since he didn't experience the devastating moment of seeing Fire Fist Ace die, though later on, they might meet and get to know each other randomly. Enemies like Hody Jones, Caesar, and even Doflamingo will be easily defeated by Luffy. However, when it comes to Katakuri, there won't be much of a power difference. And by the time we get to Wano, I don't think the super training they had to undergo to face Kaido would even be necessary. Moreover, Ace should fulfill his promises to Yamato and Tama. The point is that everything in this story would move much faster. I believe the One Piece anime might already be finished by now.